and here in the United States.
All right, Mike, I apologize in Ohio. I didn't mean to keep you waiting this long. What can we do for you?
Well, thank you very much for taking my call, and
Sure.
thank you for the dialogue, the conversation, the insight that all of you are providing.
Glad
but
you're
I
joining.
think what you need to hear from us, as many times we're referred to as the heartland of the United States, but I think the heartland of the United States is every part of the USA. But what you need to hear is we do understand. We do know that the front can be both here in the United States and worldwide. We do know that it's going to take time. It's going to take patience. And I think everyone in the country needs to tell you now, we're ready. We will correct the problems. There are many problems that we understand. There's problems with not only the way our safety is handled at through the airports and so on, but I think you need to hear from us, we're ready, because what we're fighting for is our very way of life.
Fair enough. That's pretty well put. I'm not sure I could have said it any better. Mike, thank you. It was worth waiting for. It's 1:01. You're watching a new endeavor around these parts. They've dubbed this CNN Hotline. And before we go to Gary Cutley for the latest news, let me just give you the number to call. It's toll-free, and we'd like to hear from you. You know, one of the things that occurred to me walking into the studio, everybody from in Washington and New York City, people at the Pentagon, the phrase, our lives have been changed forever. I'd be interested in hearing how you think your life's going to change. What about your kids? What about your travel plans? What about your spending plans? What are you going to do when the stock market opens on Monday? It's been closed for the longest time since World War I. Our lives are going to change. It'd be interesting to start hearing perhaps from some people on how they think their lives are going to be different as a result of this awful thing that happened on Tuesday. Time now to get caught up on the latest news, and for that, here's my friend Gary Cutley. Gary?
Thanks, Jack. We're going to look first and foremost right now at the investigation which is underway. And some progress is being made, and we're happy to report that authorities are now holding a second person as a material witness in connection with the attacks. He had been held by U.S. Immigration Services. The first material witness was arrested Thursday at New York's Kennedy Airport. And the FBI says it is questioning two other people who were found at a New Jersey apartment. The address of the apartment was supplied by other people believed connected to the attacks. And at a news conference in New York City, it was revealed that the passport, stand by and listen to this, the passport of one of the suspected hijackers on that plane that flew into the towers was found blocks away from the World Trade Center crash site. Somehow the passport survived. Nobody else did, unfortunately. Rescue crews continue to dig through the remnants of the World Trade Center, still hoping to find survivors, any survivor there, but the records did not yield any on Saturday. Hasn't really since Wednesday, I think. Only 159 dead have been recovered, and only some of those have been complete bodies, and nearly 5,000 are still now listed as missing. But Mayor Giuliani says he has some hope, but really it's only slight hope. He acknowledges that some survivors may yet be found. And elsewhere in New York City, the funerals have now begun. 3 top fire department officials were buried and honored on Saturday. More than 300 of the city's firefighters are among the missing. At the Pentagon, authorities say 187 people are missing and presumed dead. On Saturday, family members of the victims were brought by bus to the scene. Many brought flowers and balloons as they mourned their friends and members of their families. Well, President Bush has put out a terse order on Saturday for the men and women in uniform. Simple, quote, get ready, unquote. Here's Kelly Arena on the President's Weekend at Camp David.
Spending the weekend at the secluded presidential retreat in the Maryland mountains, President Bush huddles with his national security team and prepares the American people for war.
We're at war. There's been an act of war declared upon America by terrorists, and we will respond accordingly.
The president refuses to discuss military options, but for the first time, he specifically named suspected terrorist Osama bin Laden as a, quote, prime suspect behind Tuesday's terrorism spree. Bin Laden is believed to be hiding out in Afghanistan, with the ruling Taliban government providing him safe haven.
This act will not stand. We will find those who did it. We will smoke them out of their holes. We will get them running. And we'll bring him to justice.
When asked if those words mean President Bush is considering using ground troops to attack terrorists, aides say nothing has been ruled out. But winning this so-called war and finding the elusive bin Laden won't be easy, says a former Clinton administration official.
We're not fighting a military, we're not fighting an organized power, but we're fighting a very diffuse and shadowy organization that has links in many different parts of the world.
Knowing Americans are hungry for swift retaliation, the president uses his radio address to say a sweeping response will come in time.
You will be asked for your patience, for the conflict will not be short. You will be asked for resolve, for the conflict will not be easy. You will be asked for your strength, because the course to victory may be long.
And aides say President Bush has gained strength from his meeting Friday with more than 200 family members with loved ones still missing, believing his job is to turn their sorrow into something positive for future generations. While the American people overwhelmingly support a military response, keeping that support up will be another big challenge for the president, especially if a prolonged military attack means some U.S. troops lose their lives. Kelly Wallace, CNN, near Camp David, Maryland.
And Jack, as the president's up at Camp David with his advisors planning and plotting what to do next, an interesting fact we should revisit. This week CNN Time did its poll, found that 62% of Americans supported the idea of Congress declaring war. Well, in fact, it's done that through this resolution of support authorizing the president to take any action. Okay, hold the numbers. 62% declare war. 61%, when people were asked, against whom do you declare war, 61% said, I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah.
I don't know. And yet it was interesting to hear Mike in Ohio just a minute ago in this calm, collected, thoughtful voice saying, hey, we know what the situation is. We know that the front line is here as well as abroad in Afghanistan. And that's very encouraging, I find.
Yeah, you could probably go broke underestimating the innate intelligence of the people of this country. A couple of observations. I was having dinner in a restaurant tonight. I live in New Jersey, about 15 miles west of New York City. Guy came in with his family. There were probably 50 people in the restaurant. He sat down. He called the waiter over. He said, I'd like to buy a drink for everybody in the place. And he did a toast to America. Just a very spontaneous thing. And then last night I was driving home through a little town called Little Falls in New Jersey, next town over to mine. And people had come out of stores and restaurants and bars and stuff. It was a Friday night. And they were standing on both sides of the street holding candles and singing God Bless America, and the cars were going in both directions with American flags. People were honking their horns and shouting USA. I mean, there are emotional signs of what has happened out there that I have never seen before.
There's the emotion, there is the anger, and this is something that Bush has to face, the president has to face. On the one hand, the public support is there. Every leader has to have it. On the other hand, that support of that anger can put undue pressure on the president.
Sure.
He's got to control the timeline on this, the timetable, and not be swept away by it. And as somebody said, act smart.
Now, there's one other story of exactly the opposite kind. In my town, there's a Dunkin' Donuts, and they're open 24 hours a day, and it's a town of 12,000, and people go there, particularly on the weekends. I go on Saturday morning, get a couple of donuts and a coffee, and you always see somebody you know, too. The day after this happened, I drove by and it was closed, and there was a police car sitting in the lot. They're open 24 hours a day. The kids that worked in there, they're probably in their early 20s, half a dozen of them you could look at them and assume that they might be Arabic. The rumor going around town was that they began some sort of celebration on news of what happened at the World Trade Center, and that they had put some sort of anti-American slogan in the window, and that the police had come and closed the place out of fear for their safety. And that's the rumor that spread all through the town. Turned out absolutely untrue. I stopped this morning. I asked, the cops were still in the parking lot. I said, what happened here? Guy said they got 150 threats in the first 2 hours after this thing happened, and we had to close the place. It turns out the kids are Indian. They're not even Arabic. And it was that rush to judgment based on appearance, that stereotyping, and it's just an ugly, nasty, horrible example of the kinds of things that can happen, but I guess shouldn't happen in this country. So the good, the bad, and the ugly is out there, and it's going to be with us, I guess, all of it in some form for a while. Ken in Texas, what's your question?
Yes, sir. I'm a native New Yorker. I was born in Queens at Wyckoff Heights Hospital. I now live in San Antonio, Texas. I spent 5.5 years in the United States Army. I just heard the commentary from John from Fort Hood.
Right.
Saying they have a tank sitting in a motor pool with no drivers.
Right.
I'm an ex-tank mechanic. I spent my time in the service. I was wondering, what about us? What about the service members that spent their time, got out, now would love to put a uniform back on? I would waive all my rights for benefits and everything just to put a uniform back on to serve my country. I have no other way to do it. I sit here helpless, and I wonder what happens to us?
You know, I don't know the answer, Ken, but I can tell you where you might get it. If you called your congressman's office or called, you know, a local armed forces recruiting office, I don't know if down the road they'd make provision to take some of us old guys back. And I say us old guys, I wore a uniform too. They wouldn't take me back at my age. But depending on how this thing unfolds, there might be some sort of stateside duty or volunteer work that people that served in the armed forces can do. You might be able to go over there and get that tank running for Mike or Ken, whoever it was. But call your congressman's office. I'll bet he could tell you, and that would, and we'll see what happens. It may happen. Who from North Carolina? Salim.
Yeah.
Salim, you're on the air. What can we help you with?
Thank you very much. Just concerned that the Americans understand, we in America, that there is a holy jihad, and what we're up against in the long run as Americans is like a spiritual war. And I'm concerned that we as Americans do not understand that, for example, in a couple of years, a disgruntled Russian physicist or who needs money, or Chinese, or maybe Iran, if they get nuclear technology, they don't get a small suitcase-sized nuclear bomb into one of our cities and level us to the Stone Age. So I don't mean to sound Machiavellian, but I'd much rather have more of Truman and less of Chamberlain. The Arab states are very identifiable, that support terrorism, and they use these people like surrogates and blame them and say, oh, we're not militant as them, but, you know, they give them protection.
Sure.
And so what I'm saying is this, I don't mean to sound Machiavellian, but if we don't take out their infrastructure, we would be more merciful to them. Of course, as Americans, we would say, get your women and children out of all your cities, which are very identifiable, Kabul, Tehran, Damascus, and say, get all your women and children out. In 3 days, we bomb your cities with nuclear bombs, tactical nuclear weapons, and destroy your infrastructure, set you back 200 years. Then maybe they have the fear of God to come against America again. Or should we wait for them to do that to us? That's my first question. Should we wait for them to do that to us?
What's your
Now,
next
should we
question?
preempt them with superior technology and ability to deliver it? Number one. Number two, shouldn't there not be some questionable, I agree with you, like Japan in World War II is terrible, the way the Japanese were treated. Racism is horrible, and dark-skinned people should not fear, okay? And I had that happen to me the other day. That is not the point. The point is there should be some tactical profiling of Arab males that have come into this country in the past 10 years, let's say, and some designated profiling by the Immigration Department, the U.S. government, to determine whether or not these people should be here, because obviously someone of non-Arab descent and a male of non-Arab descent would be extremely highly unlikely that they would carry out such terrorist attacks, because this is a spiritual thing. We can say
I understand. Salim, I got to run. I want to pursue your mention of the holy jihad, though. Harvey Kushner could tell us more about that. That's a phrase that we hear, and it's in the media, and I'm not sure I understand it. What does that mean exactly?
It's misinterpreted. Actually, jihad, or a holy war, or a holy effort, in face of saving society, Islamic society, is viewed upon as a noble deed. And in that case, everything goes. War is justified against an enemy in the protection of Islam. But clearly, within the Arabic world, particularly the interpretation of Islam, traditional Islam is a peace-loving religion, and we must be careful not to paint the broad brush of the 1.5 billion Muslims who live around the world as all looking to destroy the United States. We're taking a very narrow interpretation of the Quran. The Quran is specific. There are the sayings of the Prophet Muhammad in these hadiths, which these incendiary, stem-winding clerics misinterpret, issue fatwas. We hear bin Laden issuing fatwas, and quite frankly, technically he can't issue a fatwa. He's not a cleric. But this is the problem we have now. We're tending to throw everybody into the same pot. I would imagine, Jack, that in the upcoming months, we're going to learn a lot about Iran, about Afghanistan, about Pakistan, Turkmenistan, about that area of the world, and Islam itself. That needs to be clarified. If we're going to take on an enemy that supposedly a jihad against the United States, we're going to have to know what we're fighting. And clearly, you know, we mustn't now lessons learned in the past, certainly it's a shameful part of American history, the internment of Japanese Americans. Italian Americans as well as German Americans
Sure.
were also attacked.
The other thing
and clearly that